I'm delighted to be joined by former Peterborough United, defender, winger, midfielder, attacker, versatile, Jamie Day. Jamie, first and foremost, you actually work at a football club, so you're pretty much in a similar boat to all of us at the moment, and in a sense, there's not much you can do.
No, not the minute. Strange circumstances, but hopefully the next few weeks we'll start to maybe get some sort of normality back in terms of maybe sort of seeing the lads again, and I don't know, maybe getting some training sessions going again, because obviously after just listening to Boris's update, it's looking likely that things are starting to go the way we want them to. So fingers crossed. We've got to try and be positive. I'm trying to be positive for the lads and speak to them and try and say that there's this to look forward to. It has been hard, but now we've got a little bit of kind of information that we might be able to use and be a little bit more positive about.
Take you back to your Peterborough United career. I think you made your debut in 2003, which 2 years after I joined, and a long time ago. I think it was against Doncaster in a defeat, from memory serves me correct. Can you remember anything about that whatsoever?
Yeah, I can. I can remember it really well. There's lots that I can't remember, if I'm honest, but that I do remember. I think every player's going to remember their debut, but I do remember, obviously, Barry was the manager at the time, so it was Barry that gave me my debut, so I've always had a lot to thank him for it in that respect. But yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't the outcome in terms of the result that we wanted, but obviously for me it was a special memory making my debut.
Yeah, particularly given the fact that obviously you're part of the academy as well. I guess that or the end game for any academy graduate is obviously to play a first team fixture. So when that happened, I guess it was a fulfillment of your dreams.
Yeah, of course. I mean, from a young age, obviously that's your goal, isn't it? To make your sort of debut in the Football League. And I've been at Peterborough for quite a few years, sort of working my way up through the youth. Then into the reserves, obviously, and then thankfully, as I turned 18, Barry was, great, really. He gave me my debut. So, yeah, I look back and, I see Barry every now and then, and I always, I don't remind him of it, but, he knows he did a lot for me.
Yeah, I'd imagine that, knowing Barry as we do, his advice to you was probably go out and enjoy it. There probably wasn't too much in terms of detail about it. Was that how you remember it? Just sort of go and enjoy yourself and do what you do best?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah, funny you say that. Literally to the words. I mean, yeah, at the time, I mean, Barry was always good with younger players, and I knew that, so I didn't feel any fear really, even when I was sort of warming up on the side. Maybe there's a few butterflies, but put my mind at ease. And it was literally just a case of no pressure, go and enjoy it. And I think as a young lad, sort of making your debut when you might be a little bit nervous, hearing something like that from obviously your manager is probably what you want to hear.
I think by that stage, you'd already been to Manchester United, hadn't you? I think you went to United at 17 in terms of the sort of, I'll describe it as a trial because it sounds good, doesn't it, that you're on trial at Manchester United? I mean, you went there and obviously played within their academy system. I think you played in the Milk Cup as well and followed in a line of a number of other players. I don't know, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Obviously, like I said, I've been in the youth team at Peterborough, and it was not long after Luke Steele had gone to United. And there was a scout that had been at our games, obviously, that had been watching Steely as well. And I got a bit lucky in terms of the United under-17s were just going to the Milk Cup, and their left-back got injured. And next thing, Barry got a phone call asking if they could, in his words, borrow me. I wasn't too bothered. Obviously, I jumped at the chance, and thankfully, we went there, had a really good tournament. We won the tournament as well, and I did really well because they invited me back for a second trial with the older lot. And we went to Jersey a few months after that. So fantastic experience. Obviously, the Jersey one was amazing, and then a few months after that, turning into January, just after Christmas, I went on trial to West Ham. So that year was a really sort of enjoyable year for me, and I learned loads, both as a player, as a person as well. Going in and having those types of experiences was amazing.
Was there anyone in that United team at the time that you might remember now, or was it all? I suppose it's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you look back now, and obviously, as you look at other people's careers, obviously keep an eye out on everyone that you played with or played against, and the team we won the Milk Cup with, you know, some fantastic players. Name a few that have gone on and done well. Sylvan Ebanks-Blake was a forward, Fraser Campbell up top, Paul McShane, Tom Heaton was in goal, Danny Simpson at right back. Starting to name drop a little bit now, but you can imagine obviously the type of squad that we had. So looking back, it's probably no surprise that we won the Milk Cup that particular year.
And Barry was always good at that, wasn't he? If there were opportunities to further your development, particularly as a youngster, he would always encourage you to do that. I think probably nowadays people look at it as, you know, it's all about a signing and this, that and the other. But sometimes it's beneficial, isn't it, to go and have a look and surround yourself with a different environment.
Oh, absolutely, and there's no doubt about it that it made me a better player. When I did come back to Peterborough, there's no denying that sort of over those 6 months when I've been to United twice and West Ham, the West Ham one was, you know, I turned pro by then, so I went there as a young pro, so I got changed in the pros dressing room and things. So that what I learned during that period made me a better player, and then ultimately it was then I came back. Barry felt I was ready for my debut, and then not long after that, sort of I started to work my way back into the first team.
Yeah, it always amazes me when players have those trial experiences at big Premier League clubs and sort of walking into the dressing room for the first time. I mean, it's almost like going to school, isn't it? The first day, you don't know anybody. You're sort of looking for someone to hold your hand a little bit. Did somebody do that, or did they just...
Well, it was for me, because obviously I was only under 17. Like I said, I turned pro at Peterborough a month or two before I went. But obviously, with my age, and I hadn't played in Peterborough's first team at the time. I went there expecting to change in the under 17s or under 18s changing room, and next thing I know, I get told that I'm getting changed here, and I walk in, and obviously all the familiar faces are in there, Defoe, Carrick, people like that. I'm thinking, I think something's gone a little bit wrong here. But luckily for me, Matthew Everington was there at the time. And obviously being from Cornwall, he's from Cornwall. I used to stay at the house quite a few times on a regular basis when he was at Peterborough, and I just started, you know, I just joined the club. So lucky he was in there. He took me under his wing a little bit.
I always think that left-footed players are a little bit more stylish than right-footed players, and I'm saying that as a right-footed player. But they always, when someone says they're left-footed, people always sort of perk up, don't they? And say, well, we need a bit of balance, this, one, and the other. When you were sort of coming through and making your debut, obviously the fact that you were left-footed means that you can play in so many different positions and provide balance. Did you think that was an advantage coming through at the time?
Oh, 100%, and it's something that, you know, obviously I've gone into coaching now, and it's something I try and tell our under-18s now that, you know, you need luck sometimes, and, you know, I get asked a lot of questions about how I did this or how I did that, what worked for me, what didn't, but what people I don't think understand is how much luck that you need. Yes, you create your own luck, but you do need opportunity as well, and I do feel, you know, I think back to my youth team days, and you know, I wouldn't say I was in the top few best players of that particular youth team even. I had a good attitude, which I always maintained throughout my career, but 100% agree with you, Phil, that being left-footed gave me, you know, probably a bit more of a chance, a bit more of a head start than other players in other positions.
Mm. And obviously you found that versatility, the fact you could play left wing, you played left wing back, you played left back, you played inside one as well. I always find that when players say they can play in a number of positions, what they really mean is, I really wish I could play in one position and only play in one position. Did you see yourself as a winger full stop when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, absolutely. And then obviously it was the gaffer that kind of reverted me back to left back, because he wanted to play with attacking fullbacks, and that's kind of when we first started to see the new kind of era of attacking fullbacks. But for me, it suited me down to the ground, being an out-and-out winger. You know, I was quite happy. I remember the first day of training of doing 11v11, and he put me back there, and in my head I thought, I don't know how to defend. I've never defended in my life before. I know how to attack, but I remember him saying to me, I'm not interested in that. All I want you to do is in possession, get on your bike. And literally that was the message. So it suited me down to the ground. And I remember it well because it was at the time when it was not long after Patrice Evra was signed for United, and you just started to see the kind of change in how fullbacks were playing. And I think obviously it then went into the gaffer's head, and that's how he wanted to change his style of play and introduce it to the club, because obviously it was a big change to the club as well. I've never experienced it.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because you often find that players that need to develop by looking at other people, and it's all right saying, right, you're going to play fullback and this is what I want you to do, but if you've got someone to model that kind of position on, then it doesn't half help. And whenever you ask a player who their hero is, 9 times out of 10 it's someone that's played in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that was the case for me sort of as a winger, and then obviously going back to when I then went to a left back, I did start to look at sort of how other players were playing it. And obviously I mentioned Patrice Evra there. I used to watch his United games. I remember his debut. I don't know if you remembered it, but it was horrendous. He had one of the worst games ever. And after that, he obviously started to show his potential. And really, it was kind of just the attacking side of his game that, yes, the defending side was obviously important for me to learn. And if I'm honest, I look back and I was probably got caught out and found out a few times. But I'd like to think that, what I offered going forward was sort of overweighed and overshadowed probably what I lacked defensively.
Yeah, when you look back at your career, because you played under so many different managers, so many different styles of managers, obviously from Barry at the start, through the Big Ron era, through Keith, through Darren, and they all had something different. As a young player, did you feel you had to sort of impress all over again every time a new manager came in?
Yeah, I think that's the case with a lot. I think even sort of proven senior pros now, they know when a new manager comes in, it's, you've really got to, you start from scratch again. It's a clean slate, as they always like to say. And I think it's important, and I think it does freshen things up as well. And it obviously gives you a little bit of a point to prove. Some managers will come in. I remember some that I played for would instantly sort of like you, and you just get a sense of it. But other times you kind of get a manager come in and, they might not talk to you for 6 weeks until they've properly seen you play. And that happened to me in a couple of situations at Peterborough, funnily enough.
I've spoken to obviously a couple of players that played during the Big Ron era: Dean Holden, Danny Rowe, Adam Newton. Some more in front of the camera in terms of the show, some that weren't. You sort of blended a little bit into the background, which is probably what was the intention at the time, and you probably got away with it a little bit because you were a younger player. When you look back on that time, do you sort of think, how did I sort of get through that? Because it was quite a challenging time, I'd imagine, as a player.
It was, but I really enjoyed it. Funny enough, I did. I really enjoyed kind of that period. Obviously, the whole program. Obviously, there were certain things that didn't look great, but for me, I was knocking on the door of playing in the first team. I'd start a few games, and then I'd kind of be on the bench a few games. So I had a lot to prove as well. So I look back and at that group. I thought we had a fantastic group of players and characters in there as well. There was a lot that went on. Don't get me wrong, but I look back at that with fond memories, to be honest.
Where were you when the fists were being flown? Were you in that dressing room?
Well, if you watch, Phil, I jump in right at the end.
When it calmed down, and when you think there was
just once it calmed down and all the big guys, Arbs and that, Cardi kind of cleared off out of the way, that's when I kind of jumped in a little bit.
Nice. I mean, it was quite interesting because obviously you were similar in terms of the journey that you made to Ryan Semple, and still probably is quite similar in terms of the journey you're making now as a two. Same sort of player in terms of wanting to get wide and get crosses into the box. Did you sort of help each other, particularly during that period of time?
Yeah, it's a good point actually. We were both at the time when we were both making our debuts. We were both quite direct wingers, and yeah, obviously Semps was a year older. He was a little bit more advanced in terms of sort of playing in the first team at that particular time. But yes, I certainly looked at what he was doing and kind of gave me a bit of an idea of how I wanted to see myself sort of over the next sort of 6 to 18 months. But now Semps did a lot for me as well. Obviously, year older in the youth team. Still really good friends with him, and even now I ring him a lot in terms of asking him for a lot of coaching advice. Obviously, he's been coaching a lot longer than I have, and done fantastic now. Really, really, really well in terms of, sort of where he's been, and over the last 3 or 4 years, what he's got on his CV now as a coach is fantastic, and I think he'll keep moving forward in the right direction, to be honest.
How good was Danny Crowe as someone that saw him close up in training? Obviously, he had a very good goal record. In fact, when we spoke to him, his goal record, I think, was 33 and 99. He was winning 3, just over 1 in 3, which at that time was a fantastic goal record for the level we were at. How good was he, do you think? And do you think he could have actually gone on and done a lot better than he potentially did?
Yeah, I mean, if I think back to it, sort of, I was a pro probably 9-10 years, and I'd probably say was the best finisher in terms of technically the best finisher I've played with. Certainly, sort of in training, you'd see it, and obviously in the games that he played for Peterborough, like you just said, he had a really good record. That one season where obviously he scored all those goals as well, I really thought he was going to get a sort of a move to the Championship. And I think if that had happened, I think he probably would have kicked on then. Obviously, things in football, they don't always work out like you expect them to be, but certainly in terms of his technical ability in front of goal, I think it's probably one of the best I've played with.
When Bleo quit, he obviously came as a massive shock, I'm sure, to everybody in the dressing room. I always find it interesting watching it back, and I've watched it back hundreds of times, seeing the reactions of players that are on camera, but obviously there was a lot that weren't on camera at the time. What were you thinking? Were you thinking, what is going on here? Or did you just accept this happened and there's not much you could do about it?
Well, I think I was going to be on the bench that game, and I remember just thinking, oh, that might mean I start now because Barry might take the team. But yeah, obviously, you look back now, and I don't think things like that would happen these days, would there? And I think that's why you look back and with so much of a smile on your face, because like I said, there wasn't great things that were shown, and obviously from a fan's point of view, that they probably looked at that and thought, well, that's shocking, really. And like I said, there were certain things that weren't good enough, but I just remember thinking that this is, you couldn't write it, could you? And I knew all the cameras were obviously in there as well, and I know exactly the reaction that you were talking about. It's when Shane Hughes and Crowe start laughing as well. But yeah, it was a really, really strange sort of 6 weeks. I think they were there for about 6-7 weeks, I think, the cameras, and yeah, I don't think they could have probably got any more than they wanted, to be honest.
Ron Atkinson as a person, I always remember him. He was very approachable and very knowledgeable. Obviously, is he someone that actually, as a young player, you'd be foolish not to speak to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he really liked me right at the start. I don't know why, but again, going back to sort of like managers and proving yourself and things like that, for the first week or two, I didn't really kind of get a great vibe from him. But then obviously the more he was kind of there, sort of games that sort of he attended, he started to have more of an input, and certainly in training, he did a lot of work with me as well. And I look back and like I said, certain things weren't great, but I know a lot of those things during that time with those characters, those players, those managers, it no doubt made me a better football player.
As time progressed, you sort of found a little niche as a free kick taker. I mean, I think you scored 5 or 6 in your time at Peterborough, but you went through a very purple period where I think you scored 2 at Wrexham and then 1 at Barnet, all from free kicks. Was that something that you actually practiced? Because obviously at that time, there were quite a lot of free kick takers around, I think. You must have have won rock, paper, scissors to get on them, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm not... I did practice them, yeah. I didn't score many goals, as you know, but my assist ratio wasn't too bad at times. But yeah, no, I don't know why. I didn't score. Looking back, that's one thing I always say. Looking back, I didn't score anywhere near the amount of goals I should have done. But certainly the ones I did were the majority of free kicks. And yeah, I remember them well, obviously, highlights. And I think the Wrexham game was and the Barn, I think they were quite close together. It was the year we got promoted from League Two, and they were important games, if I remember, both away games, and they were important 6 points that we got. So yeah, it made it a little bit more special as well. The fact that we were obviously working and heading towards promotion.
Yeah. Everyone says that the people I've spoken to with regards to Darren, when he first walked through the door, I think 3 people have said exactly the same thing. Oh, I can't believe how young he is. How's he going to be our manager? How is he going to have that discipline and sort of, you know, that you could look up to as a manager? Did you think that at the time, or did you think, you know, just because of his heritage?
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, to be honest, because I was quite young, so I didn't really think too much into it. But as you say, I know a lot of senior pros at the time did think that. And I remember thinking, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to go. But I mean, within days, you just knew what he was going to bring to the table, and the changes that he was going to make were so instant. And, you know, he just got everyone on side, which you need to do if you're going to be a good manager, certainly if you're a young manager like he was at the time. And he did, he got everyone on side, everyone bought into his philosophy, everything that he wanted to do, all the changes he made. And you can just see the professional standards that he brought in, which obviously everyone bought into, like I say.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. When I look back to Darren's first spell in charge as manager, obviously been back several times since, but there were 3 things that I always remember. 1, don't get on the wrong side of him. 2, he's got ruthless banter. In terms of he will come for you for anything. You know, if my shoes were bad, and they were, he would come for them. And thirdly, you knew, as you mentioned that word, professionalism, and it was probably what was required after, you know, a couple of spells where perhaps professionalism wasn't where it should have been.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing sort of about the gaffer, I felt, was he had the perfect balance. And as you said, if he crossed him, if standards weren't up to scratch, you knew about it. But at the same time, his man management, his banter, sort of, he knew how to get someone on side, and I could imagine he's still like that now. And that's, to be honest, that's one thing I've taken, you know, into my coaching now. I take a lot from what I learned from my managers, but obviously a lot from the gaffer. And it's important to have that balance. If you're too far one way, they're not going to go on side. But if you're too far the other way, then obviously you're not going to reach the standards that obviously need to be implemented. So I thought he had the balance right. And I think, you know, I always say, I get asked the question a lot, who's the best manager I've played under? And, you know, it's the gaffer, hands down.
How much did promotions mean to you, particularly as someone that had come through the academy? Because sometimes players can be signed from non-league, and I remember I spoke to Welps and Chaz, and they were like, oh, this is easy, you just come in, get a promotion, happy days. But I suppose if you've been at the club a little while longer, it will mean a little bit more to you.
Yeah, well, obviously I joined at 13, moved up at 15, turning 16, so I've been at the club a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes. And, you know, to be involved first and foremost with a promotion was obviously unbelievable. But I completely bought into the city itself. Obviously, being from Cornwall, obviously it's totally different, as you can imagine, to city life. So I had to make a lot of changes personally, and you know, as a character. And you know, once I moved up, I totally bought into living in the city. And you know, I went to school. Obviously, finished my year 11. GCSEs in Peterborough, and so I'd been around the city for a good 5 or 6 years until we got our first promotion, or my first promotion. So yeah, I remember it being really special.
Yeah. Unfortunately for you, obviously injuries played a part as the time progressed, and I always remember the sort of, you know, press conference that we did where you were sort of talking about how your back was affecting you, and how it was really getting to the point whereby, you know, you couldn't train and this, that, and the other. I guess when you look back on that time now, you must be a little bit proud of yourself, because you came through a very, very tough period, and a lot of people would have fallen under the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, I weren't in a good way. Without getting the violins out, I really wasn't. You know, it wasn't, once all my back problem, you know, my real bad back problems had started. It wasn't a case of, or you know, my career's ending. What do I do now? It was everyday life that I was struggling with, and it took me a good sort of year, 18 months to really, you know, get the pain under control. Like the amount of specialists I saw, the amount of trips into London. Thankfully, the PFA was supporting me, because obviously I was out of contracts at the time. I'd moved back to Peterborough after finishing at Crawley, so. You know, looking back, it really was. It wasn't a good time, but thankfully I come through it. You know, I kind of ended up moving back down to Cornwall just to kind of get myself, you know, together again, renting a house out and things. And luckily I got the pain under control, as I said, and I was able to slowly but surely sort of start looking at, you know, my next career, really.
It's only really in the last 3-4 years where the word mental health have been discussed within football. But, you know, having worked at a football club for the last 19 years and seen, you know, thousands of players come through the door, literally thousands during Barry's time as manager, you know, that part of the game was never really discussed. And I imagine for you, particularly given the injury problem that you had, that was really tough from a mental standpoint.
Yeah, obviously, like I said, I mean, a lot of players struggle with finishing football and are unsure in sort of how to cope with never having those highs again. And there's loads of different reasons which obviously they suffer with. But for me, it wasn't really about my career. As I said, it was struggling to cope with everyday life again and worrying about never maybe being able to get a job and all these types of things. So it was a different, once I finished and retired, it was a different type of sort of, you know, thinking process that I had to kind of go through, which it wasn't easy, you know, I'm not going to lie, it wasn't, but, you know, I took my time. I sort of, you know, I had a lot of support, friends, family. Thankfully, the PFA were very helpful. People, you know, that had done a lot for me in football, you know, was still showing me a lot of support. So, you know, with everyone's help, I managed to get through it. And I moved myself back down to Cornwall, give myself a year or two just to kind of get going again. And thankfully now I work full time for Plymouth Argyle.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they come through the other side, that the easiest thing to look forward is to do it in short steps, isn't it? It's not to plan too much and say you're going to do this, 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 and this. But I guess, you know, when you finish playing in a career that you love so much, staying in it was always going to be such a real desire for you. And the route you've taken now and where you are now is to be applauded, because, as I say, it would be very easy for people to just wipe their hands completely of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And well, you see it happen. You know, it's happened to a lot of ex-players, unfortunately. But, you know, there's a lot that have to kind of go through this process as well. That, you know, you can say the same thing to lots. And there are, you know, it is one of those things that at some point, you know, your career is going to end. Obviously, for me, I didn't expect it to end at 26, 27. I wanted to be playing until I was, well, back now, 34, 35. But it wasn't to be, so I had to kind of get my head around it. It wasn't easy at times, but like it isn't for a lot of people. But, you know, I managed to get there in the end. But, you know, one thing I look back at, you know, I get asked, you know, any regrets? Do you have any regrets? I've got some. I've got a few, which are, you know, I'm not going to won't bore you going into, Phil. But the main one is really that I wasn't able to stay as fit as I would have liked to have. I get reminded of it when I come to the games, and I get chatting to Peterborough fans, and they will say, "Oh, well, you never remained fit enough. You didn't fulfil your full potential," and all of these types of things. And that's how I see things as well, which is probably the hardest thing to get my head around, because yes, I did have a lot of success, had some good memories, some good times, but I look back and, you know, I still think that if I'd have remained fit and stayed clear of injuries under mainly the gaffer, really, you know, I would have had a lot more.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Particularly when you listen to young coaches come through, they have so many experiences, and most of them can be good experiences with a splattering of bad experiences. But actually, as a budding coach and as a coach that you hope going to be really successful in the future, there are so many things that you can try and educate, particularly the younger generation, because, you know, as you say, you talk about potential. You played over 100 games for the club. You've had a decent career within the Football League. You probably had to deal with a number of things, Big Ron, injuries, etc., etc. And the biggest one, of course, is to, you know, and again, speaking to other players, they all say the same thing. They never really enjoy the career in the moment, and they look back on their career and wish they had have done, enjoyed the promotions a little bit more, enjoyed the good times, the goals. And I guess when you educate the next generation, it's to cherish the career that they have.
Yeah, it's something that I remind them of every day in training, to be honest. You know, it is one of those things. It's a cliche that, you know, don't take things for granted, but 100% I took. It's not I took things for granted, but maybe it is that at that time you don't realise you need to make the most of that particular time. You kind of just sort of go with the moment. But absolutely, looking back, you know, I should have maybe sort of realised how lucky I was at that particular time. I never felt like I actually took it for granted. But certainly, you know, with how things worked out for me and in terms of my injuries and how I had to finish early, I look back and probably those highs, those successes, I probably should have enjoyed a little bit more. But at the same time, I remember the gaffer saying to me, you know, or us all really, you know, enjoy the highs. Don't have your highs too high, but don't have your lows too low. And it's a good little saying really, because it's obviously, you know, enjoy the success when you have it. But when you have your lows in terms of a bad game, you know, pick yourself up and move on quickly from it. And it's a quote that I've always sort of stuck by really. I've gone into coaching now, as I said. It's something I remind the lads of a lot. You know, when they have a poor game or they're injured or they've been out for 3 months and they're a bit low, you know, it's something that I do try and, like I said, take a lot from what I did in terms of my playing career, what I learned from other managers, and now what I'm going to do in my coaching career.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about your coaching career. You're clearly passionate about it and you're clearly enjoying it. And I always wonder sometimes how coaches plan ahead, because from obviously you're coaching the under 18s at the moment, so obviously you have an age range that you're coaching. Do you think you get, I mean, you're obviously in a fledgling coaching career, but you enjoy seeing development, I guess, at that level, and that's what you want to see. If you give someone advice, they take it on board and score. Part of your brain's thinking, well, I've helped to get that bit out of that particular player.
And that's what it's all about. That's what coaching is, just seeing that development. What, you know, both individually for a player, but then as a group of players as well, and as a team, and it is rewarding. You know, they don't always work out. There's certain things I've learned over the last few years and thought maybe I should have done that differently. But again, that's part of development for me as a coach. But certainly, I look back at my career, mainly at Peterborough, and I look back at the managers and the players that I played with. I was very lucky. You know, I've already said in the youth team, I probably wasn't the best player in terms of who's going to make it, etc. But one thing I did, I had a good attitude, I was hard working, and I always listened to people, managers, senior pros, and I was very lucky that I had a lot of people, you know, that took me under their wing and helped me out really, and helped me develop both as a person, living away from a family at a young age, you know, 7 hours away. You know, that was a big aspect. A lot of support from people, and then obviously as a player as well.
Yeah, it's interesting actually, because I've spoken to so many former players who've gone into the coaching route or have seen, you know, obviously Matthew Etherington and Simon Davies are currently running the under 18s at the football club. Obviously Dave Farrell and Jack Collison have held that position previously and are doing coaching within it at the moment. I spoke to Andy Edwards, who obviously is working at the FA, who used to play for the football club, David Oldfield. There are countless examples of players that have gone into coaching that have had Peterborough United on their sort of playing CV. Maybe we're all, you know, taken for granted what a club it is to provide a coaching grounding. Maybe all FA courses should be held at London Road.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it seems to be that way, doesn't it? But yeah, no, it seems like a lot of sort of ex-players, certainly that have been involved with the club, have gone into coaching. But it's good to see. You know, I know there's a lot of people that haven't played the game that say, oh, well, just because you played the game, you get handed your badges. Well, you know, that's not the case. And just because you played the game, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a good coach. You know, for me, I played the game, but then I've had to retake all my coaching badges, and it's those that I've gone on, added with the experience of going and coaching, that's made me, well, what I'd like to think now is a reasonably good coach now. So, you know, it wasn't a case of finish football and then all of a sudden you just go straight into coaching. You've got to earn your stripes again and go on a little journey, really, just like you did as a player, sort of going up through the youth and developing that way. I mean, you've got to do the same in coaching.
You say you're at Plymouth Argyle. Obviously, they've given you the opportunity to sort of start that coaching career. I'd imagine you're very thankful for that opportunity, and you can say so now. But what is the sort of long-term dream? Do you want to be a first-team manager, or do you see yourself coaching younger pros?
To be honest, I mean, where I am now, I live in Truro now, which is right in the middle of Cornwall, central in Cornwall. I'm very settled here, and you know, Plymouth's still a good sort of hour and a quarter's drive for me. So, you know, it's the nearest pro club. you know, my wife's a dance and drama lecturer, not far from here. So we're quite settled in the area, to be honest. We've moved house sort of only a couple of years ago. We've got a young family. So it's, you know, at this moment in time, at this moment in time, I think we're quite settled, and opportunities for me down here are limited, if I'm honest, as opposed to living in up country in bigger cities where you might be able to get further opportunities. But, you know, progressing into maybe men's football is something that, you know, I think I'll have an interest in. But at this moment in time, I'm enjoying sort of learning the ropes, sort of, you know, with the under 18s. Developing as a coach, and you never know. I never say never to anything, to be honest. But at this moment in time, I'm quite settled.
And just finally, I've been asking this question to everybody that I've interviewed, and you were obviously at the club for over 7 years in terms of a pro, and obviously as a youth team player before. You saw some wonderfully talented players during your time. Who is the top 3 in terms of the players that you played with during your time at Posh, for any reason?
Top 3 for so early on, very early on, would be Jimmy Bullard. Breaking in with even just mentioning him, it just makes you laugh, doesn't it? Some of the things he did, and you'll remember more than me. But you know, in terms of training with him, it wasn't long before obviously he moved to Wigan. But you know, I had a few months of training with the first team. And playing in some games with him. Certainly, I'll put Jimmy Bullard in there. It's a tough one, really. Definitely put my old mate Boydie in there. Obviously, he's back at the club. You know, he tries to wind me up and say, "Oh, well, you know, I made your career because all you had to do was pass me the ball from left back." And you know, there's probably an element of truth in that as well. We had a good little partnership down the left-hand side. So what he's gone on and done, and sort of how he was as a pro, and you know, consistently done it at the top level, I'd have to put Boydie in there. And then it's a tough one. I'm going back early days. Leon McKenzie was obviously in there. He was brilliant to be around, really helpful for me in terms of a younger player coming through. Who's gone on and done really well. You know, Aaron McLean, Craig McKell-Smith, it would be harsh to not put one of them in. But obviously they come as a pair, Phil, so I'll put them in as well. All right, so I'll go with Jimmy Bullard, George Boyd, and then the Mac Attacks, kind of a pair, aren't they? So I'll put them in there. And Aaron's obviously at the club now, so they'll enjoy that one.